AFC.
All right.
Better must come. In the Alliance for Change, nobody loses an election. So my first act is to invite Jurita, Cheryl, and Ricky to join my team as we collectively run the AFC towards victory. Please. Where's Cheryl?
Cheryl.
Jurita. Cheryl, you can't ring the bell. Come.
Where's Cheryl? Oh, he's upstairs. Come. Leon, please be quiet at the back there. I hear nobody else.
We're just waiting for Cheryl to come down.
Yeah. And you will announce that?
These members, irrespective of the results that will come out for the NEC, are going to be co-opted by me, exercising my discretion to bring them on the NEC. I will say this, I can't go forward without him, her, and him, plus the team. We're not like the rest. We don't banish people, we don't use out. We compete, but when we finish, that war is over and a bigger war is coming. So we are united, all of us. And can I just invite the rest of the elected team to come up
Please.
so that we can present to the world, before we take the next election, a united front across the board.
Yeah, I need it. Take a seat.
Rafael, Carrington, David. Good. We are one team. And the other thing I want to talk to you about is we have one agenda, which is the Alliance for Change. And so going forward, let nobody bring anything between us, because we are collectively united as we move forward to victory in the bigger picture. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
We're not going to have a long time. You already
Now,
have one.
I am keenly aware that it is late in the day, and we've had a long day. We had a lot of energy, a little bit of disruption, like any good party. So I'm going to cut down the thank you speech that I had in mind, but there's some key things that I want to address, not only for the Alliance for Change, but also for Guyana. Because going forward now, our motto is going to be the agenda for change.
And
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the agenda for change. Guyana has many rivers and streams of troubled waters. Whether it's race, politics, economics, we have a lot of rivers of troubled waters. The Alliance for Change is going to build bridges over all of our troubled waters in this country. Whether it's race, sex, gender, economics, wherever it is. I pledge that we collectively will banish poverty, we will banish injustice, and we will banish inequality in a time of plenty. I heard some of the earlier leaders, Kemraj in particular, saying that the Alliance for Change is the third force. By the time the next elections come, the Alliance for Change will be the force. No third and second, we will be the force. We are no longer a small party. We are essential to the body fabric of this country. And through the way we stand, through the way we live, through the way we deal with each other, and through the way we deal with our adversities, we will make sure that we never, ever invoke in our relations race, class, gender, or politics. We are going to be the representatives of what a true Guyana must be. All races. And we will speak up irrespective of our race whenever another race is suffering as a result of the system. We must speak for all. I want to start off by saying we have to rebuild the Alliance for Change into the most powerful, progressive party that this country has ever seen. The Alliance for Change got where it got, not on the backs of mass movements like trade unions, like the other two parties. We got there by the force of our ideas and the power of our intellect. And the future of this world is not based on mass movements, it's based on the power of your ideas and the force of your intellect. And that is the basis upon which we will lead this country into the next election and into victory. But the only agenda we have is Guyana, and I want to talk to you about 4 key things about Guyana that we have to do. To get people to invest in this country, they have to be confident that we are a modern, sophisticated country of equal rights, country of equal opportunities, and that we have structures in place that are robust. We have found a lot of oil, and if we judge ourselves on the way that we managed our affairs before, the future is not bright, because if we manage the fortunes of oil the same way we managed the economy before, we are not going to do well. So it requires a change in thought. It requires that we sit down and make sure collectively, all of us in this country, PPP, PNC, AFC, ANA, Liberty and Justice, all of us have to agree on 4 key areas for the future. And those areas must not be affected by election cycles. We need, first of all, a 10 to 15-year plan for this country, for the economy. It will send a signal to our investors that we are serious about our future. We can't be serious about our future if every time we change government, we change the whole apparatus, we change policies, we decide we're building roads in a different area and not in another area. And on major projects, we decide we're not doing hydro, but we're doing gas to shore. We have to decide now that we are planning this economy for the 10 to 15 years, and all the political parties have to sign off on it so that we know that the structure of the economy is firm, it is agreed, it enjoys consensus, and we can have the worst elections and the other things. The second area is education. Because we don't realize that we are excluding half of our student population from meaningfully participating in the future of this country. And I share some figures with you. And these are not my figures, these are the government's figures. 48% of secondary students are not finishing school. That means almost 1 in 2. The new oil economy that is being built right now, let me tell you, it's not going to stop, will require skilled and semi-skilled workers. The second growing economy is construction. That will also require skilled and semi-skilled workers. So if our children are falling out of school today, 1 out of 2, they have very little prospects of getting a job in a modern economy in our own country, and the labor will come from overseas because we don't provide the skills. Right now, the kids that are leaving school are not leaving school with the appropriate qualifications. So education is number 2. The third area is foreign affairs. We have an extremely vulnerable western border, and there are only 2 ways that we can protect that: diplomacy, and we must have the ability to hurt Venezuela. We may not be able to defeat them, but we must be able to hurt them so that they don't think of doing anything. And that requires cross-political support. And the 4th area is health. None of these areas need to wait on elections. So I am saying to President Ali, as a matter of national urgency, convene a meeting of all the parliamentary parties, civil society, and our university to decide on these 4 areas what our 10 and 15-year plans are, so we send a message to the international business community and to our friends that we are serious about the development of this country and that we have plans so that they can invest in the long term. Convene it, and all of us must sign off on it. That is not going to be particularly difficult. The difficulty is going to come in our development plans, because sectors of this community, and one of our founder leaders, Kemrat, spoke about it, sectors of our community are being intentionally excluded from development. Our indigenous brothers and sisters are the most excluded community from participating in the future. And it is not an indigenous issue, it is a Guyana issue. Let me just share one statistic with you. In 2022, we, Guyana, topped the Caribbean. We had the brightest students, 22 and 24 A's. All the students came from the coast, none came from the hinterland. Not a single student from an indigenous community was able to manage 1A. You don't need formal apartheid to realize that that is educational apartheid, and we're doing it every single day. And therefore, it is not an indigenous issue, it is an issue for all of us to get up and say, from tomorrow, I don't want you building multi-billion-dollar schools because it does not change the result. You have to spend that money on the teachers so that they can teach the indigenous so that they are up to scratch with the rest of this community. You cannot talk about building roads and building infrastructure and leaving the most important aspect of our future development, the human citizens of this country, out of that equation. We have to prioritize as a party human development. It is key. Imagine a Guyana with no citizens and a lot of fancy roads and a lot of high rises. You still gonna call it Guyana? Guyana is Guyana because of its citizens, not because of its roads, not because of its infrastructure, not because of great promises given to parliamentarians or given by parliamentarians or politicians. Guyana is Guyana because each and every one of us is entitled by right to participate in the bounty of this country. And therefore I am proposing that we abolish immediately the liberty of giving government ministers or politicians, whether in the opposition or government, the right to come around and give us cash grants, handouts for flood relief. Let us give each and every citizen a direct cash grant to their economy or to their account, direct cash grant. And we must put it in law, direct cash grant, so that politicians, I am now a politician, can't come around and give you money and tell you be grateful. Imagine if I came into your house, took your money out of your house, left you starving for 2 weeks, and then turned around and bring the money back to you and say, here's a cash grant, and you say, thank you, Mr. Hughes, thank you. That is exactly what is happening today. We also have to develop a love for data and disaggregated data. Guyana is making $65 million an hour right now. That means every 10 hours is $650 million right now. Ask yourself if you are seeing anything that is justifying that level of income, whether in your pocket or nationally. And if you cannot find where it is going, you know where it is going. And therefore, if it is not going to you, somebody thieving your corn. And it must stop now. Now, in the next 5 years, we are going to double the money that we make from oil. Double. So we can move from 65 to $130 million an hour. Y'all notice how the population jumped from $750,000 to $850,000 overnight? Nobody has said to us where those extra 100,000 people came from. And because we are a divided people and have been a divided people since independence and before independence, immigration is one of the most important things for us, not for the government, for us. We, the citizens, have to decide who we think can become a Guyanese and what the criteria to become a Guyanese must be. Imagine how ridiculous it will be. You got one party, they bringing in Bangladeshis, and another party want to bring in Haitians, and if you get another party, they want to bring in somebody else. Absolutely not. We cannot continue to cultivate the seeds of discrimination against our own. Nationally, each and every one of us, because each and every one of us is under threat, has to decide on an immigration policy and how long it will take for you to become a Guyanese, if ever at all. For decades, we have sat on benches in the Caribbean because we weren't good enough. Well, we need to protect what is good enough for us today. We cannot, and the Alliance for Change has suffered from this through the first 2 election cycles. And I want to talk a little bit about constitutional change, brothers and sisters. How can we, in a multiracial, multi-ethnic, culturally diverse country, say that you cannot collate after elections? You must be able to collate after elections because people only speak at elections. And therefore, if they bust up the votes, 33, then you must be able, after the elections, to have a coalition so that that government must represent the people who are in the majority. The days for 1 seat and half seat majorities are over. We cannot. And we cannot have a system in a multiracial democracy that says that the winner must take all. Impossible. Because if you have a winner that is elected by 50.5% of the population, and he or she has all the power, who is speaking for the remaining 49.5%? And don't run around and tell me when the 49.5% have no voice, that is the democratic will. The democratic will does not give you the political, moral, or actual authority to subjugate and dominate the 49.5. As a matter of fact, it doesn't give you the right to dominate anybody, irrespective of their participation. But all is not lost. I want to talk to you about the future, because I believe the future of this country is bright. But we cannot lie down and sit down and prop sorrow and assume it will be bright because we have money. The money that we have now will attract people who are not necessarily our friends, who want to take it from you. We have to make sure that we are familiar with what is happening globally and internationally if we want to protect that money. And so we have to develop, first of all, a change in our culture that we examine and we are familiar with everything that is going on in this country. Don't take it from me, don't take it from a politician. We all have to read and become familiar with what is happening. We also have to develop a culture where we hire the best international brains to advise us in our development. We do not know it all. One of the biggest failings is when you think you know it all. And oil and gas is a new economy for us. We don't have a history in it. So we can't be expected to know anything about it. Therefore, the next best thing that we can do is hire the experts to advise us. Those in the indigenous community are familiar with a thing called free, prior, informed consent. It means you must be free to decide, you must have detailed, informed information on whatever area people are proposing in your community. Well, in Guyana, because we lack familiarity with oil and gas, we need to have informed, free information about the aspects of our economy as we go forward, so that when we give our consent to a particular policy, we know most, if not all, of the aspects, and most importantly, the consequences of our decisions. I want to give you one final example of where we have misstepped and why we cannot continue to misstep. We cannot have any politician in this country, none, including me if and when I become president. No politician in this country must be able to bring forward any plan, economic development plan, oil to shore plan, any major plan without a feasibility study. None. We have a $1 billion project going on called the gas to shore project, and there is not a single feasibility study. Imagine if I come to your grandmother and you eyeing up the little money she got to give to you, and I say, Granny, give me this money, I'm going to invest it, and she don't ask you, and I take it, and I go and put it for the horse to run last. I'm going to go back and say, Granny, the horse didn't make it? That is exactly what conducting large projects without feasibility studies means. We have had several disasters. The Skeldon factory, we sold to the sugar workers of Berbice that this was going to be the savior. A sugar factory that cost $212 million US at the time, when we had a protected market, which we knew the Europeans told us they were going to take away the special privileges we had, and we go and put $212 million in what was a dead sure failure. And we sit down and we take it. We have the ridiculous position today where we are saying to the most important community for the future of this country, the teachers, because unless we build up our population and educate them, they're not going to make it. But we are saying to the teachers, we can't give you a retroactive increase and an increase in your salary, but we are prepared to give a family $180,000 per student to go to some private school. And if you think it's going to be the private school of your choice, think again. They are going to say these are the accredited private schools, and you know who those private schools will be owned by. But we sit down and we continue as a people to allow the political class to run all over us. It means that the Alliance for Change has a lot of work to do. We have to go into each community, each bottom house, whether it's from Crabwood Creek all the way to the Winey, all the way down south to Guns. Each and every household, we collectively will have to visit to talk about the future and to educate our population about what's going on. But the future I have for Guyana which we are going to be responsible for selling to our citizenry. As a matter of fact, let me touch on one more important thing that we have to do before I talk about the future. We went into government. We had varied success in government. We are out of government. It doesn't matter how we came out, we are out of government. We are now in 2024, and we have to re-examine what it is that we did when we were in government and how we came out of government so we don't make the same mistakes again. You cannot talk about the future if you don't look back and acknowledge your mistakes and then try to correct them. That is the most fundamental thing about a proper functioning party. And we have to decide very quickly over the next couple of weeks in open, friendly, constructive environment to discuss what it is that went wrong so that before we can decide how we're going forward, we must know what did not work. So I know a lot of people are going to ask me where you stand on coalition. And I will say to you, this is not the time to talk about coalition because we have to understand what coalition involves so we don't put ourselves back in the same position we were in 2020. We have to acknowledge some hard truths. Let us not be afraid of the truth as a party. We have to acknowledge when we have done wrong. We have to acknowledge when we could have taken a different path. But with the benefit of hindsight, we see we could have taken a different path, but we didn't. And we have to inform ourselves what those reasons were to make sure that we don't repeat them again. I am confident that this party will rise bigger than it has ever been before. They have said that we are dead meat, carcass. You know who the most powerful man in the country is? He spent last Friday press conference. I ain't even get elected yet. I ain't get elected yet. The man spent 3/4 of the press conference abusing me. And he said he got 15 things for me. I don't want to reply. I just can tell you the AFC got 15 points that can lick you up so bad, you ain't know what happened. And you know which bird is spend time on carcass, right? You know which bird is spend time on carcass? All right. The bird color like me is black, but it's a crow. So if the AFC is dead meat, ask them why they have so much carrion crow in government. Why are you worried about the dead meat party? And here is the thing about the past that we have to understand. The present Labour Party in England, which is about to win the next election on July the 4th, was devastated. When I tell you devastated, AFC looked like a bad man compared to what the Labour Party looked like in the last election. They got wiped out under the leader, Jeremy Corbyn. If they took the position and allowed people to get into their brain and tell them that they're dead, they would never be in the position now where the question is not whether they will win, is how big the landslide will be. There are some solitary lessons in international politics. There was no prime minister more popular in the most populous country in this world, India, than Narendra Modi. He took that country forward. He developed areas of science in which India dominates the world. You couldn't question his policy. And going into the last election in India, they were convinced that he was going to vanquish all of his opponents. He was going to get over 400 seats. Mr. Modi's party did not even get a majority by themselves. So we have to take the lessons from that. We have to guard against hubris. We must never believe that we are secure. We must never believe that God is going to give us anything, even if He has given us all the signs. We have to work for every living inch that we made. I will also say to you that in going forward, there are people who are going to try to separate and divide us. That is going to be our greatest threat. And they're going to try and separate us on many fronts. They're going to say that race is a problem. We don't have diversity in the leadership. They're going to say that we are a classist party. The best one I heard 2 nights ago on the show with David Hines is somebody said, I'm an aristocrat. Therefore, I can't lead. Well, I want them to know that I'm the most aristocratic, working class man on the street. And where were they every time the poor people get shot? Every time they take advantage of the indigenous and don't want to give them their lands? I want to ask them, have they spent time with the people on the ground? And I want to let all of us know that going forward, we will have to go into the most depressed communities, not to visit like some tourists, but to spend a night in those communities to understand what it is that poor people are going through. I give you my commitment. I will sleep in the poorest of poor communities in this country overnight. Because it is one thing to read about poverty on a piece of paper. It's another thing to wake up in the morning and you got to go outside at 3 a.m. into the outside latrine, worry about the snakes, come back inside bucket bed, and then walk 3 miles to get to work. Unless we feel it, we will not know it. Poverty is not an academic exercise. Poverty is a lived experience. And if we are going to speak with anything looking like a semblance of decency, we have to understand and feel it. So I want to encourage those of us who are going to be going out to persuade people to vote for us, that we have to spend at least a night or two in the extreme positions of poverty in this country, so that when we talk about how we are going to eliminate poverty, we understand the fundamentals of what has to be eliminated. Our task is not an easy one. It is not going to be an easy road. How, in a time of so much abundance, the World Health Organization has said to our people that 20%, this is not Nigel's figure, this is not the AFC figure, this is not the PNC's figure, this is not even the PPP figure because they said wrong. The World Health Organization said that 20% of our children living in extreme food poverty. Sound like a fancy concept. It means 20% of our children ain't eating on any given day. That's 1 in 5, brothers and sisters. 1 in 5. And if you think it gets better, 40% are living in moderate food poverty. We're making $6 to $5 million an hour in this country, and 1 in 5 of our children is living in extreme food poverty. That is not indecent. That is completely unacceptable, and it is a part of a commencement of a system of complete ostracization of parts of our community. We have to stand up now. We have to arrest this now, and we have to say to all of those who are exercising decisions on our behalf without consulting us, enough is enough. The future, the agenda for change is, like all of us do in our small ways, when we look at the future of this country, we know what is happening in terms of oil from now to 2020, 2030. We know what's going to happen between 2030 and 2035 in terms of oil. We have to sit down and decide how much of that money we are allocating to the number one priority of this country, education. We have to change the entire education system that we have. We cannot continue to put teachers in a position where they got to have extra lessons to make a living. We have to make sure that the teachers are comfortable. We have to give them housing. We give them a mortgage for 30 years. We give them duty-free status. And we say to them, you have no reason why you cannot finish the curriculum in the academic year. And we put in place incentives that are binding on them, that they have to make sure that 80% of whichever cohort they are teaching achieves the top 25% of the grade. That's how we do it, and we build top-class neighborhoods for them to live in, so the teachers don't have to sweat how they're gonna live. The only thing they have to sweat is the quality of students coming out at the end of the exams. And this idea we have of a broad-based education has to change. We have to make sure we educate our people so they can get jobs in the areas in which they are operating. Construction. The demand for construction in the next 5 years, brothers and sisters, this is an ILO, International Labour Organization report. Guyanese will be unable, not possibly, we Guyanese will be unable to meet the demands of the labor force for this country in the next 5 years. Think about that.
Yeah.
If we can't meet it, somebody else who is not a Guyanese is going to meet it. And that is a frightening scenario. We know that there has to be some level of importation of skills. But if we are not training our people to meet that demand, then somebody else is going to come and meet it. But I want to close about the future because it is bright. It is bright beyond you in your best dark shades can look at the sun. It is huge. But you know, there's that old biblical story about somebody getting the lots and deciding what they're going to do with it, and somebody decided they're going to bury it. This country will only be successful if we can manage our resources. One of the first things most Guyanese learn is that when you get a little money, you put away some in a savings somewhere.
Instead of investment.
It's called an investment. Thank you, Jarita. Last year, the National Resource Fund, that's where all the big money been. 95% of the money spent out.
Done.
Spend out.
Spending again.
If I said to you, take your savings and put it on a horse named Good Luck,
Yeah.
and it running at 20 to 1, tell me if you can take your savings and put it there. That is exactly what we did last year, and then they turn around and tell us, oh, we're building roads. All we need is a bad flood, and God don't send it. All we need is a natural disaster in this country now. And we done spell out the little money and we got to run back and borrow. That is called irresponsible management of your national resources.
Borrowing all the time.
Since people have demonstrated that they cannot manage our resources responsibly, that is why we have to put in place a national development plan and a national infrastructural plan that will decide how much money going on infrastructure. But it's not just to be giving them money for infrastructure. We have to decide on what the national infrastructural plan will be. And all the political parties have to sign off on it. I know since when people wake up in this garden, they say, oh, I decided doing this, and all of us got to follow. Not in this democracy. So we have to decide, friends, where are we going to allocate our resources? What we put into education? What we putting into national investments? What we putting into education? What we putting into social plans? And how much we giving as a direct transfer to every single citizen of this country. That oil out there come for all of us, and we have to participate. I don't want nobody play Godfather and Daddy and tell me how I must spend that money. I am entitled to it, it's mine. Transfer it to me and let me decide how I want to spend my money. So direct transfers must be part of the plan. We have to build a country in which there can't be overt and covert discrimination. And the way you attack discrimination is not by jumping up and saying discrimination. You don't want to jump up. You may feel it, you may know it, but if you feel it and know it and it is there, the data must be there. So you go and get the data. If 10 people who purple getting all the money and the country got 25 people purple, yellow, brown, red, green, and only the purple people getting served, it means the rest are not getting served. And what we say to our ruling political class is, boss man, we ain't accusing you of nothing, but this is what the numbers say to us. And therefore we have to confront this government and any future government with data and disaggregated data. Because you can't argue with data. You can't argue that no indigenous person didn't get an A in 2022. You can't argue that 5 of the 6 people who have licenses to export gold out of this country come from one group. It may be historically correct. You cannot argue that only 18% of the contracts are going to one set of disserved and non-served people. And we cannot assume by the figures that are given, because the indigenous don't even feature at all, that somehow they are not entitled. They are more entitled because they are more discriminated against. And so, a year or two ago, I published something called Economy and Justice that showed the data.
We need another mic.
Need another mic. This must be this is spineless mic. I need another one.
There's a black one I was supposed to start.
Case. Case on the ground. In front of you.
Yeah. That was fine. I was starting.
Thank you. I'm wrapping up. Talking to you about economy and justice. It showed some figures about the distribution of our national resources and contracts. You would have thought that a responsible government, they never challenged the figures, they never said the figures were inaccurate. You would expect that a responsible government will say, if this thing is so bad, I am going to put in place policies to rectify it. I am going to make sure that the national resources, that the contracts, that everything that is distributed in this country at least aspires to be as equal as is possible and provide equal opportunity. Not a single thing has been done. Not a single thing. In this country, we all get excited when they like to attack the author and not the content of what he says. What I would like to propose is that disaggregated data, all of us must be entitled to information on the development of this country by right, not by favor or by grace. And when we see our own figures, we can decide what we are going to do. So brothers and sisters, we have a task ahead of us. And this is the best equipped party in this country to provide a multiracial solution to our problems. And so long as God blesses me and I am responsible for the leadership of this party, we will go into every single house. So there will no longer be PPP strongholds that are off limits. We are going into all of these strongholds. And we are taking no prisoners. There are PNC strongholds, and people like to believe they are PNC strongholds. We are going into their strongholds and saying it publicly, and we are taking no prisoners. We are going back to our strongholds and saying to them, we're sorry, we might have failed you. We have looked at our failures, we have corrected our wrongs, and we have come back better and stronger than any ever before. We are going to demonstrate to this country that you don't rule the government in favor of your supporters because their votes put you there. We are going to demonstrate that we represent each and every single person in this country going forward. And where we falter and we are criticized, we will be dignified, accept that criticism, rectify our ways, correct our ways, and move forward. Because we mature like that. We don't pretend to have all the solutions for this country. And I will say to you now, from next week, I will be reaching out to every single representative body, private sector, chamber of commerce, trade unions, every community, the teachers, the sugar workers, GAU, everybody. We are going to them to say, look, we want to hear from you what your vision is on the future, because we believe your participation in the future of this country is essential. And we are going to say to them, even if you don't vote for us, we must commit ourselves to a Guyana, an agenda for Guyana in which each and every one of us has a fair share, fair shot, and entitled to the bounty of this country. Not a one Guyana where you tell me what I do. That is going to be our task, and this is what I am tasking the executive of the Alliance for Change. Jurita, who everybody loves, beautiful young lady, is going to be tasked, she's not our secret weapon yet, is going to be tasked with going out to the youth, because the youth are the most essential part of this country. All the members of the YFC today, when we meet again before the elections, you must be the strongest youth movement in this country with the most progressive ideas about taking this country forward. We have to meet all those professional people who are too scared to speak out because they might lose the job or lose the little contract, and say to them, there is a better way. And we have to understand, brothers and sisters, that as much as better must come, bad must go. I want you to repeat after me. Bad must go. The only way you can get rid of a problem is if you cut it out of your body. Otherwise, it's going to become malignant and it will take over the whole body. And just think about it now. Corruption is almost a human right in Guyana. Everybody's saying, money got for make. It don't matter how this money making, you know. If you got to sell your children, sell your relatives, pawn your neighbor, and they didn't even know they're getting pawned. This concept of money got to make has to come into context. We support people who make money, and we support people who do that legitimately and are committed to the development of the country in the process. But we cannot continue to have foreign governments embarrassing our law enforcement agencies by telling them that we got teeth and we, So brothers and sisters, I want you to resolve today, because this is a serious, even though celebratory moment. We must resolve today to commit to Guyana. Not the Alliance for Change only, but we must commit to Guyana with all her beauty, all her warts, all her difficulties, because God has clearly chosen this country to lead the Caribbean to what really should be a true and just society going forward. So I thank those of you who voted for me. Those of you who did not vote for me, I thank Cheryl because your competition has made me a better competitor. I know for sure that the brightness that Jarita showing all them memes she had with me, that's what made me a better competitor. Every time I see this, oh God, it's Jarita again, boy, oh God. So when she go home, they can got a big meme push the door, and they can say, welcome, Jarita. Brothers and sisters, we have a lot of work ahead of us. I am convinced that this is the party, and I tell you why. In the last week, the amount of people who have contacted all sides saying they want to come back. A lot of people have said they want to come back. And it don't matter if they come back because of Cheryl, or they come back because of Jarita, Ricky, me, Kathy, Raphael, anybody. We want them back. All of them. We bringing home all the prodigal sons and daughters. Because we going home, we are marching to victory to run this country in a way in which it has never been run. So brothers and sisters, I've gone on longer than I thought I should. Yes. But I will leave with you the mantra. I have this for years, but I'm sharing it. Better must always come for Guyana. Thank you very much.